Do you need a Sorceress build to combat all the things in PoE 2, like the really challenging bosses in each act, as well as just clearing maps insanely easily, having a great CC and as well AoE damage, while also being able to maintain essentially infinite mana, and only really needing a few keybinds? Then I got the Sorceress build for you. What's up world, this is Utopia back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things Path of Exile 2. Okay, so let's just jump right into the build. We'll get into all the different things here. We'll get into the skill trees, where my support gems are, what skill gems I've chosen. We'll also go over a little bit of the gear, although it doesn't matter that much. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. Let's just showcase how this build actually does work overall, and then we'll go into some of the skill tree stuff. So first off, a quick introduction. We're mostly going to be spamming a few abilities here. So for the first one here, we're going to be using Frostbolt, which essentially is these little casts here. These will give you some nice AoE damage, as well as some nice freezing with them. Very, very good here. We also have Frost Nova here, or Ice Nova. That's going to let us essentially clear mobs that are around us very nice and easily. And our main weapon here is also going to help with freezing. Very nice here as well. Does some nice little AoE stuff, and it freezes very, very fast. We have one more ability, technically two more, where we're going to be using Frost Bomb. You can see here it is very, very quick when it explodes. This does a ton of boss damage and just AoE damage in general. And then we also, I just learned a new ability, which is the Frost Bite. Haven't had much testing with this. This is just a little area effect that will do some debuffing. Overall, this will help with bosses. Mostly, you're really not going to want to be casting that amount unless you're doing boss fights, but you can incorporate that into the rotation. Okay, so let's just get into how this build actually works. As you saw from some of the beginning footage, we did a ton of AoE damage. We cleared packs very, very easily. So let's just jump right into the actual abilities. Unfortunately, I can't show the actual skill cutting page or the uncut gem page where it shows the levels, but you can see them here just fine. But it doesn't have the big diagram. Unfortunately, you can't open that unless you actually have an uncut gem. You can't see the abilities here. So our main starter weapon ability here is Freezing Shard. Again, I said the main weapon or the main weapon ability didn't matter too much, but this one is very good. So if you do get a Freezing Shard staff, I would recommend this. This is a really, really good ability. It does a lot of freeze damage overall when things are frozen. Even though it says the DPS is low, it actually does do a lot of damage, and it adds a lot of freeze to an enemy. Them frozen much quicker than other abilities. In fact, this is utilized a lot on some bosses. If the bosses are not moving a lot, or they're not kind of ranged, or need to be fighted and ranged, then you can actually use this ability more often than having to use the other abilities, because it will freeze them quicker, and that's basically what you want to do, is get them frozen as quickly as possible. That will allow you to kind of put a lot of damage on them. We do take some stuff like Spark and Flame Wall, but we're not really going to use them. We're really just using the Frost abilities here. So Freezing Shard is one of them for sure. This is our main ability again. And then we're going to jump down. We're also going to take Ice Nova. Ice Nova is going to allow us to get mobs away from us. Essentially, if mobs kind of like crowd up, you'll more than likely want to use that over your other abilities just at the moment so that you can stop them, and it will also do a decent job freezing. It doesn't do a ton of damage, but it does apply. Next up here is one of our bread and butter abilities. That is the Frost Bomb. This is insane damage. It does such good AoE damage and very, very good boss damage. Now you'll see this is actually our first one that we do have support gemmed. So these are the two support gems that I do take. The first one here is Fast Forward. As you saw there, our supported skill actually does go a lot quicker than normal. This is going to make it so that we do the damage faster. We're really going to want to use this one. This one utilizes a ton, or will be utilized a ton against bosses AoE. That way if a boss is moving around, they won't move out as fast. Super good there. Next up here for our support gem for it, we're also going to take a 40% more area effect. You see mine is a little bit larger than probably most people's, as it does 40% more of the area. That will allow, again, for either when a boss is moving or when mobs are moving, they'll be more likely to be in the Frost Bomb area. Next up here is our Frostbolt. Now this is actually our bread and butter. This is what we're going to be casting most often. You'll see that mine casts 3 right now. It has a large area radius. It also does a ton of CC damage. It also can do decent damage, but more than likely this is meant just for CC stuff, as we'll be trying to freeze as many enemies as we can, or bosses in general, and this is our freeze at a range. We can also do something really cool with this ability. You can do basically several abilities here that I'll show you in a second with it, that'll kind of be in combination with that do allow for different things there, and so if you want to do that, you can. You'll see a lot in the footage where I use Frostbolt. Now for the two things for Frostbolt, we are going to take a supported skill here, the 50% more freeze buildup. That allows us to get those freezes out and freeze enemies more often, just really utilize. This is going to be our bread and butter, again, abilities that we're either using on a boss or we're using for dungeons or maps just in general. Next up here, we do have, as you saw, I had 3 abilities here, or was casting 3 of those. We have the Scatter Shot. This one is really good support ability here, as we do have a supported skill. Now this already doesn't do a lot of damage for us. We're more than likely just using this to freeze mobs, like as I said, and so the 20% damage loss is not that significant. We really just want that more projectile, as we're covering a wider radius when we do actually cast these out, and so it does help a ton. And it also gives us 20% less attack and cast speed, so we can cast these much quicker and get them out much faster. It's just a really good all-around support gem for this, and basically very utilized. Next up here, we do have Cold Snap. Now Cold Snap is another bread and butter ability. This does a lot of DPS damage, as you can see. Once we freeze a mob, we can essentially target them and make them explode. This is kind of like the Necro ability in Diablo 4. It is very, very good. Once we do freeze mobs, we want to use this right away on them, and then we can make them explode. Bosses, it will do a ton of damage to them, so it's very, very utilized. Although it will unfreeze the mob if you do use that, it also does a little bit of cone radius there. You do want to use this one kind of strategically on bosses, as you don't want to use it instantly. You want to be able to get some casts off while they are frozen. And then for the support gems, we have Controlled Destruction here. This will deal 30% more damage with hits and ailments, and this support skill gem basically cannot hit criticals, but I do think the 30% damage increase overall is very good. An accidental take here, where support skills do create a chilled ground area effect when they freeze an enemy. Essentially, you're not really going to get a lot of freezing with Cold Snap, so more than likely you could just socket this one into freezing shards. That's where I'll probably put it right now. If anything, you could also put it in Frost Nova, or Ice Nova rather, and slap it in there. Either one, whatever you're freezing more with. I guess I'll just put it in this one for now, as I do occasionally freeze mobs with Ice Nova, not as often, but we don't have a lot of support gems that we can slot in for different ones. This will probably, if we do get more gem slots here with our Frostbolt, we'll put it in for that 3rd slot. And then last but not least, we have Hypothermia. Again, this was just an ability that I recently grabbed it, as well as level 7, and really only going to be utilized with bosses. I wouldn't utilize this anywhere with AoE stuff, just with bosses to kind of give them some more cold damage or take away their cold resistance. That way we can do damage to bosses that have that. Now jumping over, we do have our skill tree. I'll try to go through this fairly quickly, but we're just going to take all increased spell damage. This build does not use a lot of mana regeneration, so we're going to skip this entire section here. We're just going to jump through, get these spell damage nodes here, then we're going to get the raw power node. We're also going to go over here and get some cast speed. We do want to increase our cast speed. My plan is to kind of go on the right side of the board here eventually. We'll go up, first off, I would more than likely get the elemental damage, and then the increased cold damage and freeze buildup. You're going to want to take that right away. You skip this path first and go up here and get this freeze buildup and cold damage increase, and then the elemental damage increase. But we'll skip this one for now, at least, because we don't really need it a ton. We'll go over here, we'll get cast speed, then we'll get the projected cast speed, and you can go over here and get this right one. If you are dealing with some issues with your health bar, I used this one on the Act 2 boss. I wanted to get a little bit of extra shield there. This will increase your extra shield and give you 10 intelligence, which I did use to equip an item. Certain items will require certain intelligence. This is a really good one early on as well. We'll jump up here, we'll get the spell critical chance, we'll get some critical overloads here, as well as more critical chance and the spell damage. And then we'll come up through here, we'll head to the right, we'll take 5 intelligence, another 5 intelligence, and we'll get the increased spell damage here. We'll keep coming across, getting these increased spell damage. And then last up here, I am going to be taking Potent Incantation, which will give us a 30% buff to spell damage and a 5% reduction to cast speed. So we still don't even have this. We're going to increase our damage 30% across the board here, which is just absolutely insane. So once we get this node here, we're going to even do more damage already with this build. So it is a very nice. My plan, again, is to go on this right side of the board, more than likely down here, and either get some of this other stuff like these little critical chance nodes, but I will have a further update build on that. Last up here, just for some gear stuff, so if you really wanted to see and were curious, we do have the level 4 freezing shards. Again, this ability is just so good for boss damage and really good for AoE damage and freezing. We don't use it a ton of time, but it is really good. We also have gloves here with some int, and then I have this really nice chest piece that I got. This helped out a ton. We also got the Halo Twig circlet here, and a ring. Didn't really do much, but it was one of the rings I found. My leggings here, or boots here rather, and then that is it for that one. I would say the main resource here that's really helped me is this Grand Life Flask. This gives me 15 charges per second, and it has an increased recovery rate. This one is really good. I really like this. So if you do get a gain 0.15 charges, this one really helped me on a lot of challenging boss fights. That's what I would focus on for that. Over last up here, I want to show some of the stuff that we can do with Frostbolt. Now I know I mentioned this earlier in the build. We're constantly casting this. We don't just cast Frostbolt. You can actually do some really cool stuff with this. You can cold snap these frost balls that you're casting. You can just cold snap them, which is really cool. You can also do frost novas on them, so you can do frost novas from range. That'll really help. You probably saw that a ton in the footage of me casting that. You can also do that with bosses when you're casting this. You can do these on the bosses. They actually do decent damage, about 100, 150 damage, so not too bad there. And you can also build up frost nova damage on them. More than likely you're not going to do that, but it is pretty cool there that you can do that with the cold snap on that ability. It kind of adds some more dynamic and some comboing. We'll probably do some other combos with some other abilities, but right now this build is just so good. We really only need frost abilities. You don't have to take anything else. You could maybe lay down a firewall, but I don't know. It doesn't really, I don't think it's too utilized, and they do obviously combined with your frost bolts, but I just think that this build overall is already very good. You really don't need to be casting anything else. Overall, it should about cover for today's video. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, and until the next one, deuces.